Which Side Podcast is a proud member of the Which Side Media Collective.
This week's episode is sponsored by
The Usual John Pasa.
I've heard that name before.
A bunch of times.
He's our friend from down under. I don't think New Zealanders like to be referred to as Australian. I'm sorry, John.
What, it's not the same place? He'd like to shout out Rebel Press. It's an anarchist publisher in Wellington, New Zealand. They publish radical books and zines and have a new book out called The Compassionate Contrarians, A History of Vegetarians in New Zealand.
Yeah, when I read that, I really wanted to get them on to talk about that, so we're going to work on that.
It's about vegetarian and veganism in New Zealand, and their website is rebelpress.org.nz.
Yeah, go to them, get the book, let them know that you heard about it on Which Side, and thank John.
I come from a land down under. If you'd like to sponsor an episode, you can do so by donating at least $10. That's what it costs us to produce each episode, and that's all that we ask from you.
And we'll be your shield.
WhishSidePodcast.com.
This is episode 96.
Yeah, we had TJ on. He was an undercover investigator with Mercy for Animals and PETA.
And PETA, yeah, for like 6 fucking years.
Doing really awesome stuff that most people just really don't have the strength to do, honestly.
You know, he talks about that, and I listened to it. You know, he's really adamant that anyone can do it. The actions of these undercover investigators is what's driving like ag-gag laws. They are trying to get them to stop because it's one of the few things on the front line that is getting information out to people of the horrendous cruelty that is really going on day in, day out in these massive agricultural places.
Yeah, and usually when laws pop up, you know that you're doing something effective.
Exactly. Any news or events going on this week, Jordan?
Yeah, on Thursday, I'm going to be out in Denver. I'm going to be doing a former prisoner panel at the Whittier Community Center. So check that out. It starts at 6 p.m.
I know what you're really doing in Denver.
Yeah, I'm actually going to the North American Anarchist Black Cross Conference, and I hope to see all of my comrades that are involved in... I said comrades.
I know you did.
Involved in political...
Prisoner support. They also are still trying to raise money for the conference. It's costing them a ton of fucking money. So they have a website you can go to. We'll have that in the show notes for you. September 12th, 1970. Acid guru Timothy Leary escaped from prison. Get this. With the help from the Weather Underground.
Wow.
Yeah. If you like these every week, pull them out of the Slingshot Personal Organizer. It's an awesome collective. Support them. This is how they fund their collective. You can get them at any info shop, or if you don't have a local info shop, start one, or you can get them on online info shop like AK Press.
I hope you enjoy the show.
So,
how's your day?
Yeah.
Not bad. Got up and went down to the food carts on Division near where I live and got some vegan waffles. It's a waffle sandwich that they make.
Where do you live?
Currently I'm in Portland.
I was going to say, there's not many places that I know you can go get a fucking vegan waffle at a food cart.
Right.
That's awesome. What do they usually put in the sandwich?
They have 3 different ones. That's vegan sausage and maple. Then they've got a like a savory one that's like a tofu and like artichoke hearts and greens with like a sauce that they make
Mhm.
that's like wrapped in it's like a waffle taco kind of. Think of it that way.
You know, from the bottom of my heart, I hate you right now.
That first one sounds so delicious.
Yeah,
It's all out of
there-
jealousy, and you can
there
tell.
are amazing vegan food carts and restaurants here.
So what led you to go to Portland? Have you been there? Like, did you grow up there, or just decide to
No,
live
I
in the
did
vegan
not.
mecca?
Yeah, so in all of my time traveling, working undercover, I lived all over the United States. Some places like Texas and North Carolina and Iowa, for example, more than once, like 3, 4, 5 times in those states. And I have never been anywhere in the U.S. that I like more than Portland, Oregon.
That's awesome. Have you
So,
been to Salt Lake?
I've been through Salt Lake, and I've like stopped and eaten there and stuff like that, but I have not spent a lot of time there.
I mean, that's all you really need to do. We're just good for food.
Yeah, we're good for a visit. No, I don't know about staying.
It's a good pit stop along the way, when you're traveling back and forth across the country, coming to and from Portland. Salt Lake City, it actually ends up being on the way a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned doing the undercover work. Most of that was for Mercy for Animals. Is that correct?
I actually split my time sort of half and half between Mercy for Animals and PETA. There's kind of a couple of different ways to look at undercover work. Number of cases, the impact of the cases that you worked, a lot of different criteria. But time-wise, it was roughly 2.5 years at each place with some time off in the middle. For a grand total of about 6 years between the two organizations.
Jesus. So how does one get into being, an undercover investigator?
I know a lot of people have different stories about how they do it, but for me, it was actually just a random sort of shot in the dark email. I had just graduated with an art degree, and I was trying to get into activism through that, and I sent this random email to PETA, and I was like, hey, I have an art degree. I do graphic design stuff sometimes. I can do demonstrations. I'm outgoing. I'm, like listing off my qualities. And then being that I was raised in the rural South and I was a football player growing up before I became vegan, down at the bottom of the email, I just kind of said, P.S., by the way, I'm also like 6'4". I'm a pretty tough dude. Maybe I could work undercover for you guys. And they got back to me and said the investigations department wants to speak with me. I did a phone interview and an in-person interview, and the rest is history.
What was the first undercover thing you did?
The first attempt that I made was it was an animal control shelter down in Georgia, and I don't think I didn't know, and I don't think that the people at PETA knew that was a situation where you had to be like an animal control officer, and you had to be like employed by the state of Georgia as like a police officer, or maybe that county, I don't know. As a police officer in order to get that job. So it didn't work out. I wasn't able to get the first job that I went to try to get. After that, I went to a couple of like roadside zoo type places and like safari parks, and I went to an exotic bird show. Actually, Black Forest Bear Park that was recently shut down was one of the first places I ever went into undercover.
Wow.
That's down in Georgia as well. And then after that, I went up to North Carolina, and I volunteered for several months at a horrendous no-kill shelter there, which was actually the first case that I ever actually worked.
So did you just go in and be like, hey, I'm going to apply for a job? Just basically straight up?
Yeah, I mean, without saying too much, we are like any other applicant who comes in off of the street looking for a job. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Huh.
And would it be jeopardizing to ask about how many people are currently involved in undercover investigating?
That actually, I don't even know the answer to. There are not many of us who do it for very long, so it's kind of a rotating group of individuals.
Do you think like the prevalence of the ag-gag laws in certain states is hindering that for a lot of people, or is it just make you want to do it even more?
Personally, it made me want to do it more. When they started doing that, I was like, oh, fuck that, man. Like, now I'm really going to want to fight these guys. So it's sort of one of those, like, it's a personal thing. You know, maybe some people are apprehensive about it. The organizations, obviously, you know, the animal rights organizations are not going to conduct investigations in a state where it's illegal to obtain or possess video footage.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the activists who are doing the undercover work are also smart enough to know not to do that as well. So it's not a situation where, like, we want to go in there. You know, well, let me back up. It's not a situation where people are afraid to go in there. We want to, but we simply can't because it doesn't make the most difference. It doesn't do the greatest amount of good.
Yeah. It probably also puts the head organizations at a lot of risk.
It does.
Yeah. So what's your origin? Like what brought you to veganism?
Oh man, that's a story. Without going into too much detail,
we
I
like
lost
detail.
someone very close to me, and the losing of that person made me reevaluate the respect that we have for life as a society. And through that sort of journey of evaluating, you know, my beliefs in terms of what it meant to be respectful of someone's life because they are alive. Both my brother and I, Eric, read the book Animal Liberation by Peter Singer, and we were just like blown away. Before the end of the book, before I even put it down, I was like, yeah, I'm vegan. Like, there's no reason to be a part of this anymore. It's logical, and it's the only option for me.
How old were you when you read Animal Liberation?
23, 24.
Okay. I read it for the first time when I was 13. It was a little above me, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's definitely a good one though.
Incredibly detailed.
It's very dry for me at such a young age.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean it strengthened my core. I've read it I think 3 times now. It's the backbone of almost all my beliefs.
Yeah, I mean there's a lot of content in there, and it's a lot of information and a lot of statistics and quoting journals and all of that, and a lot of people don't respond as much to that as maybe I did. I'm very analytical and logical, and I weigh all my options, and I try to objectively sort of take my ego out of the question and say, okay, what is the question in and of itself? What is the best answer to that question, regardless of what I may personally think about it? And I'm very logical in that way about my decision making when it comes to philosophy and my view on the world and things like that, and you know, my interactions with people, just so on and so forth. And through that process, because I am that way, reading Animal Liberation really spoke to me because it was sort of an analysis of what is happening with animals.
So how did your friends and family like take to the change? Was it just like overnight going from standard American diet to veganism? And like, how did they react to that?
Well, it wasn't overnight. So I went vegetarian, and then vegan within like 6 months or so. So relatively fast,
Mm-hmm.
but not an overnight change. The reaction, actually, my brother went vegan the same time I did. My mom went vegetarian very shortly after that.
Oh, wow.
And she has sort of like done less and less with animal products ever since. I can't say that she's entirely vegan. I don't really, grill her on her diet or anything like that, but she does as little as possible for her. And, I have a cousin who's vegan, and my family's actually pretty accepting of it. For the most part, there are a few members of the family who know the issues, but who still choose to consume animal products, and that's just sort of understandable. I mean, everybody has sort of their own approach to these things, and they didn't all go vegan or anything like that. But they all are very supportive of the work that I've done and the dedication that I have to it, and they're I guess being my family, they're proud of me for doing this for so long.
And I thought I had a big vegan family with my sister being vegan and marrying Jeremy, but that's awesome.
Yeah, it's crazy. Did they all of those people, is that from the influence of you and your brother reading the book, and it kind of spun the influence out that way?
Other than my cousin, yeah, my cousin was actually vegan long before we were, and we didn't even know, really. I mean, we knew that she didn't eat meat, but we didn't understand the term veganism or know about it when we were growing up.
So how long has your cousin been vegan?
That's a good question. I don't even know the answer to that. A long time. Like, probably, how old is she? Let's see. She's probably going on like 20 years or something.
Wow. That's awesome. I love it when you hear those.
Right.
So what's been the biggest change that you've noticed as far as animal rights goes since you've been involved in the scene?
Well, I mean, for me personally, like, behind the scenes, the investigative landscape has changed. Which are sort of like details that are maybe not the best things to share publicly, but the approach and the procedure and the difficulty of undercover investigations continues to grow and evolve. And so, we're having to do that. But personally, in terms of like, veganism and, the relationship of the movement to, the rest of the country and the world, the best story that I can tell you is this. Back in late 2005, early 2006, when I went vegetarian and vegan, I was living in a small town in rural Western Kentucky. And the grocery store in that town did not carry any vegan products whatsoever that I know of that were actually like categorized as vegan. Like, there might have been, the vegetables are accidentally vegan, right? But they're not trying to carry them because they're vegan, right?
Yeah.
So that store didn't have any, vegan products. And in less than 10 years' time, that same grocery store has an entire organic section with almost every vegan option you could want.
That's way crazy.
It's so awesome to hear that, because we keep hearing that all over the country that,
right.
In the most podunk towns, you can now find, deli slices, and you can find, all the alternative cheeses, and you can find, like, it's amazing.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm hugely encouraged by this. It's something that I tell people a lot when they ask me if, I'm asked quite often, actually, well, doing what you did, I mean, is it really hard for you to stay positive? Are you negative all the time? That kind of thing. And while personally the effects of working undercover had some negative effects on me psychologically and physically and so on and so forth, I'm actually optimistic about the, sort of goals and the spreading of veganism and the fact that all across the country you hear stories like this, and I'm encouraged by it. I mean, I think it's amazing that it's happening. And I think that it's amazing in places like the rural South, you know, where I spent half of my childhood, you can now find vegan products. And that, to me, more than anything else, just shows that we're winning.
You brought up like the emotional toll of being undercover. Is that something you feel comfortable, you know, delving into a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. So this is something that I haven't touched on a whole lot publicly in terms of public speaking or anything like that, but I'm happy to discuss it with you guys. It's something that I've discussed with some of my friends recently, and a lot of people look at the 6 years of undercover work that I did and they say, "Oh my God, that's amazing. You know, you're such an inspiration. You're a hero. You're, you know, they say all these wonderful things about the work that I did." And while I would never discourage anyone from, you know, being thankful for a person sacrificing their well-being to do something selfless like go in and take undercover footage, I would never discourage them from doing that, from being thankful for that kind of work. However, I personally don't feel like what I did is heroic. And there are several reasons. Number one, I did what I did because it was the right thing to do, because I felt like I had the ability to do it and the responsibility to do it and the strength to do it, and therefore I should. I felt like I was paying a debt because I ate meat for more than half of my life, and I owed it to those animals to share their story, to spread the word. And the other thing that I really want people to know about the sort of approach to going in undercover is that it doesn't take a hero. I don't think of myself as a hero. I think of myself as just a guy who decided to do the right thing. I'm just a normal dude like everybody else, and anybody can go make a difference in the world, and anybody can go in undercover. You don't have to be particularly athletic or smart or capable or, I mean, whatever qualities people, you know, want to project on others who do things like this. You don't have to be any of those things. You just have to care, and you have to want to make a difference. Now, there is a certain aspect of it, you know, it is physically demanding. It is psychologically tough to do. So you've got to be tough. But I think those things that make you tough come from caring about what you're doing, from being passionate about helping others, about helping the other in the animals. And doing that because of that reason makes you tough. It's not like you have to be some sort of badass, you know, before you go do it. You have to be tough because you want to be. So anybody can work undercover.
You know, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I know Jordan has had those same sentiments with his grand jury resistance. So it's, you know, people just, you do the right thing, and while it is commendable, you know, anyone can do it. Like, it's rejecting the heroification of certain things. Like, anyone can stand up and do what's right. Anyone can stand up and fight. I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely believe that, man. I mean, I grew up as a football player eating meat in the rural South. You know what I mean? I don't want to go as far as to say I was a redneck, because I think it would offend a lot of people who are actually rednecks, who I know, who are like friends of mine and stuff. But you probably did burn your neck a lot, right? Sure. No, I mean, you know, I don't want to go as far as to say I was a redneck, but I definitely was on, you know, I was all I cared about was playing football. And it just was sort of I don't know, I want to call it a happy accident that I became vegan, but it wasn't happy. You know, like I said, I lost someone close to me, but you know, my mother always instilled in my brothers and I, intelligence in the form of not teaching us what to think, but teaching us how to think for ourselves. So at the end of the day, I guess I have her to thank for that.
because although I was raised in a, you know, kind of a rural redneck community, at the end of the day, I had someone who was very intelligent and very active in my future, looking out for me in my mother. And I guess a lot of the analytical and logical way that I look at the world comes from, you know, her instilling in me the need to make good decisions. And so I appreciate that.
So being undercover, like the emotional like toll of having to face like the horrors that we're fighting against on a daily basis, how do you compartmentalize that?
How do you compartmentalize it in while you're working undercover in the facility?
Yeah, like how do you go in and be like I'm the type that I know, you know, if I was in that facility, I'd just be like, fuck this, no, break cages, whatever, you know.
Right.
Even though I know long term that's not the greatest thing, why I probably would never do something like that, because I couldn't keep myself in check. So like, how do you do that?
It's difficult, man. And looking back on my career, it sort of seems surreal. You know, like I was watching somebody else do it all. It's almost like it's almost like it was a movie, sort of, you know, or a novel because of the content for me. But I mean, I would talk myself up, you know what I mean? Like every day I would get up in the morning and I would do little things. Like, for example, I bought a wallet that, like from Pulp Fiction, that said "bad motherfucker" on it. And I would get up every morning and I'd be getting ready to go and I'd put on my equipment and I'd grab my keys in my wallet and the stuff that I needed, my lunch, you know, when I was going out the door. And every day I'd look at that and I'd be like, okay, like I'm a bad motherfucker. Like I can do this. Like you have to tell yourself that you can do what you're trying to do, that you can make it happen. And you have to like motivate yourself to go in there every single day. And there's like this aching like terror in your gut when you're going out the door and you know that, you know, in 20 minutes you're going to be in that slaughterhouse or in that barn and you're going to be like, you know, seeing animals getting tortured to death all day. And it just makes you just ache. That's the only word I can use. Like down in your gut, it takes your breath away and it hurts so bad knowing that you're going to go see that again, but you have to do it. And so for me, the motivation came from telling myself that I was like this, you know, like vegan undercover badass spy, you know, like I would just like talk myself up, you know, like, okay, man, like you can do this. You can get through the day. You can get that shot you need. You can, you know, you can find that shipping label that you're looking for. Like you can get it done. Right. And then I would listen to like a lot of heavy metal, like animal rights based heavy metal. Like I loved listening to like Heaven Shall Burn and, you know, stuff like that, like driving in, just telling myself, you know, like, you know, I am the voice for the voiceless, which is a lyric from Heaven Shall Burn's song, Voice of the Voiceless. And, you know, stuff like that, you know, listening to music that was empowering, that I felt inspired by, stuff like that. You know, and then it gets rough, you know, it gets rough when you get home at night and you're trying to go to sleep and you can't because you're having nightmares about the animals screaming and you have to call somebody and like cry for a little while, you know, like my brother or a close friend, and just be like, man, like I can't sleep. I'm having these nightmares. Like these animals are being tortured just right in front of me. There's nothing I can do. Like it's so hard. And while you're there in the facility, you have to just have a poker face. You have to play a character and you have to be a different version of yourself. You know, like I think most people kind of understand in terms of veganism that the person you were before you were vegan is different than the person that you are now, and you changed, right? It's kind of like that feeling. When you're there, you have to be sort of a different person and you have to act like a different person in order to make it through the day and not cry and not, you know, break down in front of these people and not start taking animals out of there, or like, you know, if you're watching a man like beat a pig, you know, to not punch him instead, or like whatever it is, like, you know, just because you're a different character, you're in that place and you can't do it for the greater good.
I can't even imagine how you would prepare for that, like not showing your reactions to the cruelty.
Right.
It's unfathomable to me. I'm sure lots of people ask you about like the horrendous cruelty you saw and everything, but
Sure.
Did you ever get surprised by any humanity that you saw undercover?
It's very rare. I'm not going to say it never happens. I don't want to make a blanket statement like that, but it's very, very rare.
Because that would at least give me
agriculture.
I was just going to say that would give me a little bit of hope if there's, you know, some humanity in there behind all that cruelty.
Well, I can tell you this, okay? In animal agriculture, you don't necessarily see humanity, right? And that's not due to the fact that these people aren't, that they're not humane on some level. It's due to the fact that the company that you're working for, whoever it is, forces the crew members to work so hard and so fast for so long that they can't show it. It's not that there are individuals who on some level wouldn't want to. Some of the people do want to show humanity. There was a guy during one of my cases on a break. We were sitting at lunch out in the grass outside of a barn, and this guy Renee I was working with, I'll never forget him. He was talking about the abuse that happens in these egg barns, and he's like, man, I love animals, dude. What these guys do to those birds breaks my fucking heart. He goes, it breaks my heart to see them torture the animals that way. And so it wasn't an act of humanity that you saw, and he was involved in doing it sort of by default because the company made him work that fast. You know, the company puts the men who work there in horrible positions, similarly to how they do, you know, how they put the animals in horrible positions, although the specifics are, of course, very different. The men are on the outside of the cage where the birds are on the inside, or, you know, the men are working on the line rather than being hoisted and stuck and slaughtered, you know? So, I mean, it's very different, but it's still sort of the same principle. The company exploits both groups. So you don't see humanity in their actions, but what you do see is a lack of sadistic behavior. And it's actually only a select few individuals in those places who are actually sadistic. They do exist, and I've met them, and it's actually at this point very easy for me to pick those people out. In the first couple of days, even as quickly as the first couple hours working with a crew of guys, I know exactly who I have to work around to see abuse.
What kind of tells do they have that gives you that information?
It's a lot of times it's their manner of speaking and their attitude. It's very often the guy who is the most dominant socially in the crew is going to be the guy who's the most abusive in the barn. The alpha male type, so to speak, would usually be the person who was the most aggressive with the animals. And sometimes it's just something that they say, something that they do, something that you pick up on. Sometimes it's just the look in their eyes. Honestly, you become very intuitive when you're working undercover, and you pick up on these sort of subtle behaviors, and you learn to read people's emotions and their body language and, you know, their speech patterns very, very quickly, and you learn very quickly how to relate to different individuals in the group to get the information that you need.
So what's come out of some of these investigations? Like, were there any legal repercussions for any of the farms, or legal consequences, I should say?
Yeah, actually, legal not as much. I mean, the sort of sad reality of factory farm enterprises is that they can make a particular crew or individual or select few people a scapegoat, and they can get out of any legal trouble because of that. They can point the finger at them, say that this man or that these men or that these people were bad apples, that they were abusing the animals, and they always quote their company animal welfare policy, which says no abuse in any way, whatever will be tolerated, blah, blah, blah. And all that does is just simply cover their ass, because it's systematic abuse. It's the company forcing the men to work at such a fast rate of speed or so intensely that's the problem to begin with. And they know that the abuse is systematic. They know that that's what's profitable. They just have to say that to cover their own ass, so that when an investigation does come out, they can point their finger at a scapegoat and say this man did something wrong.
Do you think they purposely hire those individuals knowing that they can be future scapegoats, or is it just a happy coincidence?
That's just sort of the nature of, being in such a low class like working environment. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the communities where these farms usually are very rural, very poor communities where people don't have other options, where they have plenty of turnover, for people who, get in trouble with the law, for people who, get DUIs or drug charges and go to jail. They can just find another person to replace them. And these companies, I think, very often selectively choose where to place their operations so that they have, uneducated, lower class people to work in their facilities. And they do it intentionally, because those people who work there don't have any other option a lot of times in life.
What's hard for me is, like, what you're saying right now is it's a workers' right issue on top of an animal rights issue.
Of course.
But at the same time, fighting for those workers' rights seems like animal welfare, not animal rights to me. And it's almost like, you know, what's more important?
Right.
I don't have an answer. It's just...
I don't either. I mean, it's an issue that is a difficult one to bring up, because, and especially in a lot of instances where we're dealing with illegal immigrants, then they have no rights. And the company knows that, and they use them anyway. As long as they can bring in a fake social security number that'll pass, the company doesn't care a lot of times, or they willingly turn a blind eye to it. Even maybe they don't know, but they're willing to let themselves not know.
They don't know because they don't want to ask.
Exactly.
Yeah. So did you see a lot of that going on?
Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, and that makes sense. Like, that's very common with a lot of agriculture in general.
Right.
Be it fruit or animal agriculture.
Right.
But were you ever able to, like, become, for lack of a better word, friends with some of the workers? And how did you feel? Were there any legal consequences that happened with the workers that you were working with?
Yes, there were several instances in which people were either charged with crimes. Actually, in 2008, one of my cases with PETA yielded the first ever felony conviction for animal cruelty against factory farmed birds in the United States.
Wow.
And that was 2008. So,
fairly recent.
Not incredibly all that long ago.
Yeah.
And the fact that that's the first time that ever happened, the person that was charged with a felony in that was one of the rare individuals who was incredibly sadistic.
Yeah.
And I don't believe in scapegoating, allowing a scapegoat to take the fall for the company. But in this case, that man did deserve to, at least in some way, face the consequences of his behavior, because I do think people need to be held accountable. Maybe not in terms of like serving jail time, but I mean, definitely to at least, if nothing else, to never be allowed to own or work with animals ever again.
Yeah.
I think that's like probably the best option would be to hold the company responsible legally and to make sure that the men who are abusing the animals can't have or be around animals anymore.
I mean, from some of the like undercover videos I've seen, is kicking and punching an animal in the face really a necessity in order to, get the product? And so that's where it's coming into like the sadistic
right
part of it. So
right.
For sure, that's a different level.
It is. Being sadistic is very different from, and that's why I say like this individual in West Virginia, he, I can't say that I'm happy that I actually don't know if he actually served a jail sentence. I actually didn't follow up on the case, simply because it was never my goal to imprison human beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, my focus was to show the suffering of the animals and be an advocate for them, not to work against any of these men. And that's just sort of how it plays out a lot of times. And many individuals end up, being deported after cases, or losing their jobs and losing their livelihood. And I can only imagine what other consequences, like if like their community that they're in sort of turns against them after that. I don't think that that's very likely in some of these rural communities. It would be far more likely in my mind that they would blame the undercover investigator or the organization or both, and say that, try to say that we were doing something wrong, when in fact all we were doing was showing people the reality in these farms. But it's far more likely that these people were condescending toward animal rights rather than toward the individual who is abusing animals.
So were you ever like threatened after you came out and said that you were participating in these investigations?
No.
That's good.
I was accused of things and questioned and interviewed multiple times. I was searched wearing my equipment on a couple different occasions, which was scary. But I made it through all of that. I was threatened by a person who was a dog breeder in North Carolina once. I was threatened. I didn't have a gun pulled on me, but I had a guy in Iowa at a mink farm talk about going and getting his gun sort of out of suspicion of me, I think, talking about killing activists, that type of thing. So there were definitely hair-raising moments.
So how were you involved in like mink farms and other non-animal agriculture related things, more on the clothing industry?
I did very little in terms of the fur trade, actually. I only ever went to a couple of different fur farms just to see if and when they were going to be like skinning the animals and stuff like that. I never actually was never employed by any farms or anything like that. That's something that I didn't do as much of. The bulk of my undercover work was factory farming. Mm-hmm. Mostly just turkeys, chickens, pigs, and cows. I did a little bit of, like I said, roadside zoo type, safari type attractions, exotic animal shows and breeders, a couple of small instances with breeders, and then a couple like sheltering cases, hoarding situations, that type of thing. But like I said, most of the bulk of my work was factory farming.
So with all this undercover activism, has it did it have like an effect on your larger ideological worldview?
There are times that it does. I feel like it would be very easy for me to be incredibly misanthropic, to just totally hate humanity,
Mm-hmm.
and be very pessimistic about the world because of that. But that's something that I choose not to do. While I do believe that there are terrible things in the world and that humans are causes of a lot of those things, or even most of those things, I also choose to look at the world as a positive place, as a place of progress, and from the standpoint that we're making it better, such as the groceries in the rural towns stories, speaks to that. I mean, we're making the world a better place, and we're going to continue to do that. And I know that personally, as long as I'm breathing and walking around, I'm going to be advocating for animals' rights and humans' rights, and every issue, gay rights and everything. I mean, people deserve to, and non-human persons deserve to have a chance. And it would be easy for me to go through the negative, demoralizing things that I did and say, oh, fuck it, man. Like, I don't like anybody. I hate the world. It's such an awful place. But I choose not to do that because the world holds such potential and such wonderful mystery and beauty. And I look at things like music and art and cultural beauty and the things that are positive that we do as a species and as societies. And I choose to embrace those things rather than the negative things in life.
So, stop me if it becomes a problem. But I was wondering if you could maybe delve into like the darker, shittier side of what being an investigator truly means. And by that I mean, what are some of the things that you had to do that go against your morals, I guess?
Oh, sure. Yeah. That's something that people need to know about. As undercover investigators, first and foremost, it is our job to act simply as silent observers. We are the eyes and ears of the public. We are there to simply take video and photographs and document what happens. So we try not to get involved. However, while we are there, we have to do a job. And we have to do some type of job in the facility around the animals. And a lot of times that means working with the animals themselves. And even though you don't do anything against the law, you don't do anything that is overtly cruel because you are being cruel to the animal outside of your job, and you don't do anything that's sadistic in any way, you still are there as an employee of that company, and you have to carry out the task to which you are assigned. And I've done some really, really terrible things because I was assigned tasks to do them by these companies. And this goes back into sort of the question of why I don't want to be, I can't say I don't want to be called a hero. I mean, if people want to say that, I won't discourage them, like I said, but that's not what I choose to describe myself as. The things that I had to do working undercover, I spent a week as a backup killer in a chicken slaughterhouse, which means there's a machine that has an electrified water bath, a stun bath, that electrocutes the birds so that they are rendered unconscious. And then at that point, they go through a blade that cuts their throat and kills them. There are a certain number of birds who go through that machine who neither hit the stun bath nor the killing blade. there's a man who stands behind that machine with a knife in his hand who cuts the throats of the birds who miss the machine. And I did that job.
Did you find yourself like having to be a little desensitized to it to get through it?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, getting through your day doing that. I honestly don't even know how I did it. It just takes a part of you away that you're never going to get back. I will feel guilty for the rest of my life about doing things like being the backup killer or castrating piglets or euthanizing turkeys who didn't deserve it, who were healthy. I mean, the things that I've done that I was forced to do by these companies will always haunt me. Always.
Would you go so far as to say like it's a form of like PTSD, like that you now have to constantly deal with?
I have a very good friend who's a psychologist for retired military veterans, and he has described it that way to me. So I think that's absolutely accurate.
Do you find like the community in general being responsive to the stresses that you now face because of like the PTSD?
The vegan community?
Yeah.
As a whole, I think the vegan community needs to do more in terms of like the organizations themselves providing more support for undercover investigators after they quit doing it. Mm-hmm. That's something that pretty much every investigator who I know, who I've ever talked to, has said that they think the organizations need to do a better job of that. So that's something that I think we need to do in terms of our professional care that we take of undercover workers. However, personally, the support that I get personally from, my close friends and my family and the people that I see on a daily basis, I think that support is wonderful. And the people around me who do that, who support me, on a daily basis and stuff, they're wonderful individuals, and I can't thank them enough for that. So I do think that personally, I get a pretty good amount of support, and I hope that other undercover investigators out there who have done this work, I hope that they are, and if they're not, I mean, I'll just take this moment to let them know they can by all means get in touch with me, and I'll be more than happy to be supportive in any way that I can.
Have you ever received negative feedback or negative vibes from the animal rights community for going undercover?
No, not that anyone personally has come forward and said to me or made known to me.
That pleasantly surprises me. Like, honestly,
that's good.
It's really good. I'm really glad that hasn't happened, but I'm really surprised in some ways that it hasn't happened, unfortunately.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that most people in animal rights recognize the validity of undercover work. Mm-hmm.
Have you ever gotten it from people outside of the animal rights movement, like, not just from pro agriculture people, but just that they don't understand?
Yeah, sometimes. Old friends from back in the South. They tend to be somewhat discouraging about it and negative. I had one person actually, he's no longer a friend, was before, but actually shot a shotgun over the top of my head and another friend's head. Both me and my buddy were vegan, and this other dude shot a shotgun sort of over our heads in trying to scare us over an issue that had nothing to do with veganism, but I think was because of the veganism. in general because of how condescending he was towards it.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's
Happened.
I think it's important for everyone to remember that, like, for every like investigation that's happening, there are so many facilities that are not being investigated, and with ag laws and stuff like that, the cruelty and everything is happening everywhere, and it's not being able to be documented. So,
Right.
I totally think it's awesome that you were able to do that. Is there any way that people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, actually, I wanted to take a moment. If anybody listening to the show or you know, that has exposure to it, I've just taken a new position actually with Animal Legal Defense Fund, and I will be helping them to build and create a brand new investigations department there.
Oh, awesome!
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and that's something that's just happened. I don't even know if ALDF has come out and said that publicly yet. So you guys have the inside scoop and privileged information.
Sweet, awesome.
Our first exclusive.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, we just had somebody on from Animal Defense Fund. Yeah.
Very cool. Yeah, they're a wonderful organization. Great people. I'm really excited to be able to work with them and lend my experience to an already stellar team of activists. I just could not be more thrilled. So I do have an email address set up with Animal Legal Defense Fund. It's T Tumasse, Tumasse at aldf.org. So my first initial T, and then Tumasse, spelled out Tumasse at ALDF.
Sweet. Are you saying that's open for people that want to look at doing this as
Absolutely.
As well? Okay.
Anyone who is interested in being an undercover investigator can email ALDF, info at ALDF, I think .org is the website for them, or they can email me personally at my work email address there.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much for talking with us.
Yeah, absolutely, guys. I really appreciate you bringing me on and, letting me sort of tell some of my stories.
Well, we end every show saying "fuck, shit, damn." Do you mind saying it for us this week?
Fuck, shit, damn.
Awesome.
Thank you so
Thanks
much.
so much.
All right, guys. Have a great one.
Have a good one. Bye.
This week you heard
Macrame by Tristeza.
And right now you're listening to
Forever by Bon Iver.
And as always,
El Comandantes.
Which side are you on? Again, iTunes, rate and review us. It's the best way to help the show without paying many money.
And if you haven't subscribed to us, hit the subscribe button and you can get the show as soon as we release it right to your account.
If you happen to be on a public computer and somebody signed in, just subscribe them. Do them a solid.
Apparently we're really popular on Stitcher.
Yeah. We just found this out. We didn't know. I don't know how Stitcher works, so...
But if you can,
rate us. Yeah, if you can. Fuck, shit, damn.
Is that what we're doing? If you'd like to become a member, you can do so by going to whichsidepodcast.com and clicking on the members tab. Members get exclusive bonus content,
which we will hopefully have more coming soon,
as well as access to other things like ringtone, zines, and the like. So become a member of Which Side. Help support us.
No, fuck, shit, damn.
Sure. I mean, you already said it. I'm making you chop shit together as it is.
Yep.
Whichsidepodcast.com.
Fuck, shit, damn.
Fuck, shit, damn.
Which Side is produced by the Which Side Media Collective.